The morning sun glows over Providence, Rhode Island, bathing the courthouse steps in a warm golden hue. People line up outside, some nervous, some indifferent. Inside, the familiar rhythm of Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom begins. Papers shuffle. A camera light flickers on. The judge adjusts his glasses and looks up with a calm smile, a man whose courtroom feels less like a hall of judgment and more like a sanctuary of compassion. Among the usual traffic cases and parking tickets, today's docket includes one name that doesn't stand out on paper. Hayes Robert. Just another name. Another case. But behind that name lies a story. A story about sacrifice, time, and the silent dignity of those who serve. The courtroom door opens softly. A man in his late 60s walks in. Straight-backed, measured steps, polished shoes. He wears a simple suit, not expensive but immaculately clean. On his chest, a small pin, the U.S. Army insignia. Judge Caprio looks up from the bench. "Good morning, sir," he says warmly. "Good morning, Your Honor," replies the man with quiet respect. The clerk calls the case. "Robert Hayes, parking violation, red zone, downtown Providence." Hayes nods. "Yes, sir. That's me." The judge glances at the paper. "It says you were parked in a no-parking zone near the Veterans Affairs office. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Hayes answers softly. "I had an appointment that morning. I thought it would take 10 minutes. It took a bit longer." Caprio leans forward. "You're a veteran, Mr. Hayes?" "Yes, sir. U.S. Army. Retired Major." The courtroom grows quiet. Even the faint hum of the camera equipment seems to pause. "What branch?" the judge asks, though he already knows. "Army, sir. 22 years of service." 22 years, repeats Caprio. "That's a lifetime of commitment. Where did you serve?" Hayes hesitates, not out of pride, but from the humility of a man who doesn't speak of his past easily. "Operation Urgent Fury, Grenada, 1983. Later assignments in the Middle East. Logistics and field coordination." The judge nods slowly. "Grenada," he says, recalling the name. "That was a tough mission." "Yes, sir. Short but costly." The way Hayes says those words carries the weight of memories, the kind that never fully fade. He doesn't look for sympathy. He stands there simply, as if explaining why the morning had run longer than expected. But for Judge Caprio, this is more than another citation. This is a moment to listen, not just to facts, but to the life behind them. "Mr. Hayes," Caprio begins, "the fine on this ticket is $30. But before I decide anything, I want to understand. Why was your appointment at the VA so long?" Hayes adjusts his posture. "Your Honor, it was my annual check-in. They ran some extra tests. I have a few issues from my service. Nothing dramatic, just the usual reminders that I'm not 20 anymore." He smiles faintly. A few people in the audience smile with him. Caprio asks, "Were you able to find parking anywhere else?" "There were no spots available, sir. I circled twice. I didn't want to be late. I left a note on the windshield, explaining I was at the VA, but I guess the officer didn't see it." Caprio leans back, folds his hands, and studies the veteran. His tone softens, that familiar mix of kindness and authority. "You know, Mr. Hayes," he says, "I grew up during a time when service members were our heroes. My father used to tell me, 'Frank, always respect the ones who stood watch while the rest of us slept peacefully.'" He pauses. "You stood that watch. So before we talk about the fine, I want to thank you, personally, for what you've done for this country." The courtroom is silent. Hayes simply nods, his voice low. "Thank you, Your Honor. I was just doing my duty." It's a short exchange, a few simple words, but they hang in the air like something sacred. A courtroom that moments ago echoed with routine now feels different. More human. More grateful. The judge glances again at the screen showing the parking photo. "Your car was right near the entrance to the VA building," he notes. "Yes, sir. I tried to park where I wouldn't block anyone. Caprio chuckles softly. You sound like a man who's been following orders his whole life. Old habits, Your Honor. Hayes smiles. Hard to break. Caprio picks up his pen, then sets it down again. He looks at the audience, at the cameras, at the faces watching. Ladies and gentlemen, he says, sometimes these small cases remind us of big truths. We live in a world that moves fast, sometimes too fast to stop and notice people like Mr. Hayes, people who once wore the uniform so we could live freely. He turns back to the veteran. You know, Mr. Hayes, I often say my courtroom is not just a place for the law, it's a place for understanding. So here's what I'm going to do. He pauses for effect. The city of Providence can afford to lose $30. Caprio says softly, but we can't afford to lose our gratitude. The crowd murmurs, touched. The bailiff, standing nearby, smiles faintly. I'm dismissing this case, Mr. Hayes. You owe nothing today. But more importantly, we owe you our thanks. Hayes blinks, taken aback. He expected a fine, maybe a short conversation. Not this. Your Honor, that's very generous. You don't have to. Caprio interrupts gently. I know I don't have to. But sometimes justice isn't about rules, it's about respect. The camera captures the moment, Hayes standing still, his lips tightening as he fights back emotion. He straightens his posture, then gives a crisp, almost instinctive military nod. Permission to speak freely, Your Honor? Always, Caprio says. Hayes looks at the floor for a second, gathering himself. When I came home from Granada, there wasn't much fanfare. We just moved on. You go back to life, get a job, raise kids. People forget. And that's okay, that's what we fought for. But it means a lot when someone remembers. Caprio's voice grows quiet. I assure you, Major Hayes, we remember. In that instant, the courtroom isn't just a room anymore. It's a bridge, between generations, between service and society, between law and humanity. And the man behind the bench isn't just a judge, he's a mirror, reflecting the dignity of those who gave so much. The judge reaches over, taps his gavel lightly. Case dismissed. But Hayes doesn't move. He stands there, as if the sound of that gavel carries more weight than any metal. Caprio smiles. You're free to go, Major. And thank you again for your service. Hayes nods. Thank you, sir. For your kindness. As he turns to leave, the judge adds one more thing. Major Hayes, what's your favorite breakfast place in town? Hayes chuckles. Oh, I go to Louie's Diner on Atwell's Avenue. Caprio grins. Tell Louie your breakfast is on me next time. The courtroom laughs softly. Hayes salutes, not formally, just a small gesture of respect, and walks out. When the door closes behind him, the judge leans back and exhales. All right, he says, half smiling. Who's next? But everyone knows, no one will forget that moment anytime soon. Because sometimes, justice isn't about punishment. It's about presence. It's about seeing the person behind the paper. It's about remembering that even small acts of compassion can echo longer than any verdict. Outside, the autumn wind carries a faint chill. Hayes steps onto the sidewalk, his hands in his pockets, eyes bright with something between pride and relief. A young man approaches, a stranger who'd been watching from the audience. Sir, the young man says shyly. Thank you for your service. Hayes smiles. Thank you for saying that. He walks away, down the street, past the fluttering flags of Providence. He doesn't know that millions will later see his story online, feel inspired, and whisper his name with respect. That's the beauty of Judge Caprio's courtroom. It's not about fame, or drama, or law alone. It's about the heartbeat of ordinary people, the quiet dignity of those who've lived, lost, served, and kept going. Major Robert Hayes came for a parking ticket. He left with something far greater. A reminder that kindness still has a place in justice. And perhaps, for all of us, a reminder that gratitude is the simplest form of respect. If you want to live in a better world, Judge Caprio once said, start by being a better human. The law tells